Hi everyone, here is Mr. Marko Hietala. You might know me from bands like Nightwish or Tarot or something. This time, this has nothing to do with either one of those or anything else except me. Well, at first it's kind of scary because so far it's the first and the only solo album I've ever done. So I'm taking the responsibility and the pressure and everything. So had a little bit of before this was starting. Now it's starting to be quite okay because, well, you heard the album. I'm known for being in these metal groups and all that, and there is that, but there is also a lot of that acoustic and prog side of things that I've been going through. So yeah, I actually came up with the term what this music is. It's hard prog. Not that much, but I'm open for it. I mean, so like, well, I've heard from the family side, for instance, progressive house. Well, and I like the soundscapes and good sampling and making sounds and building. That is, as an old studio engineer, I like that stuff. I like sounds, I like atmospheres and all that. And in order to incorporate them to rock music, you just have to do it. Oh, that's a hard one. Like you said, there's a lot of elements, a lot of different moods and varieties and atmospheres and all that. Sounds like I'm talking about Nightwish album. But anyway, yeah, this is about my album, and I just like the variety, and as my musical past history or whatever, I think this one has the elements of that nailed 9-year-old boy's ears to the speaker with Black Sabbath already in the 70s. There are elements that come straight from there, and then with everything that I've collected there in between, from prog rock, Kate Bush, Tori Amos, pop bands, whatever, rock bands, metal bands, and all that. It all kind of, and also those, like, Celtic folk acoustic songs and all that. There are those elements. A couple of them have slipped onto Nightwish albums too. But yeah, this is a different combination of things. This is not as symphonically flamboyant, but yeah, we did record some strings too. But it was only a quarter. The freshest pieces of music are probably when we were putting them together and came up with some ideas and all that. But yeah, there are some like really old ideas also musically. Let's see. What would I... Now when I start to think about it, I cannot think of a detail. But yeah, there are some, like, details, some acoustic riffs, like for instance that I have in Isäni ääni, Voice of My Father, which will be on the English album then later on. Those acoustic things, they're really old. And kind of a melody line that I had for it, I just rolled it over, but I figured that these are good chords to use for that story. So those are probably something like 15 years back. Is easy to say when it could be 10 or 25. I'm a little bit lost with my own history. I try to live for today. Still is, yeah. And when we go do these live, I will be playing bass,
okay,
mostly. But there is a couple of acoustic things that I have to do. And as a guitar player, I've always been into acoustics. I'm a really badass rhythm player with the electric, but I just hate the idea of playing solos because it seems to be the thing that drove a few generations of guitar players mad already. This is just by luck. There are some songs there that I wrote lyrics, With one song I wrote the lyrics in an hour and a half to wobbling outside in the sun in Nightwish summer camp. And then there are like some pieces of music. One of the songs came from a bass riff. And then some come from a melody line or a chorus, or you just come up with some kind of a part, and then it starts to coalesce into a real thing, like planets did in long times past. Coalesce out of emptiness and gas. I've done the translations already. Again, I cannot tell you the exact ratio, how many I wrote in English, how many in Finnish, but I'd say about 50-60 in the words of Matti Nykänen, legendary ski jumper. 50-60. And then I just started to translate them crisscross. Whenever I had time at home or sitting on some aeroplane. I was doing quite a lot of translations last year when we were doing shows with Nightwish, sitting on aeroplanes. So I managed to write the stories more as they are stories, but of course I have to change a lot of lyrical stuff. It's not definitely not word for word. And I also like to use a lot of contrast between soft music, hard things to say, even though I sing softly, and all these kind of things and metaphors. So they can be switched in a quite a lot of ways when you just keep the, what would it be, keep your aim, your goal in that this is what the story is about, this is the attitude, this is the vibe. So bring that from point A to B, which is the end and climax, and then it'll all be right. That's probably of course I'm ambitious about the music itself, but that was something that I figured that this is where I can make my personal mark, because I got good language skills, and I've been reading and writing and whatever with both languages for decades. So that's something that I realized that I can make my stories and I can translate them, and that's not something that everybody else can do. So I figured that this is how I make this a little bit even more personal. Okay, there are some very personal things also. There are some songs where you hear that, okay, I'm speaking from my mind. But also mind is a weird thing. I got an imagination, so I can do stories. I can take scenery of a sick jealousy. I can put myself as a protagonist and write an awful story how I control everything, and basically like Adam's rib type of attitude. I can write that thing and make songs and stories from different angles and points of view. You usually hear that those things, they are written more as stories. But when we go into my real convictions or things that I would like you to kind of, if you figure this out, you'll figure out the way how to think about these things. Those are, I bet the seriousness comes across, which is not, the seriousness is not my main point. It could be, but then again, like I said, I was 9-year-old when I got hooked to Black Sabbath, so writing doomy and gloomy stuff is in my blood. Around 10 festival shows for the summer, so we are going to do them with the same lineup that did the album. Anssi Nykänen on drums, Tuomas Väinölä on guitar, Vili Ollila on keys, me on the bass and vocals, occasional guitar thing might be, but the shows themselves, yeah, I guess we're gonna be playing all the way through the album at least. The album is somewhere around 52-53 minutes, and if we do an hour or 15 shows, we could have come up with a couple of nice fillers too. But Oh, that is of course something that I don't want to be touching Nightwish stuff because the band is alive and will start moving also pretty soon. Tarot stuff I wouldn't do either because there are still guys who might come around and we might do them one day if we feel that death of a friend isn't too much of a pressure anymore. But yeah, for this thing I think we need to go and start seeing some old favorites if we can find something nicely suitable 70s stuff, hard rock prog stuff, which we could bring on to this group, to this day and this soundscape. We're trying to get the English album out as soon in the fall as possible, but we're in a bit of a hurry for that too. And if we get it in time, there is still an option of checking out if we could do a few shows January, February before Nightwish is starting to get active. So it's in the works, but of course we have to be pretty fast with everything. And now that we got this done and it's going to be coming out, I think I'll be taking the next week off and don't give a shit about anything what's going to happen for that week if I can. Probably not always. But it's something that, of course, anyone who writes a lot of music and lyrical stuff thinks about it now and then, but now it started to be so that I had actually more than enough, like starting points for different songs and everything, and we looked into a few others as well, but they were left over for now for maybe some continuation. That hasn't been ruled out, definitely not. These are great guys to play with.
Project.
Oh, the pressure, the pressure. In fact, I don't like the pressure. I don't like the responsibility with that much. It's and it's an album that you could, like, when we were presenting it there. So like at first I was a little bit because it is different and everything, and I'm bearing the responsibility. So yeah, with Nightwish it's nicer because no matter what I write, I've been writing music and even lyrical stuff in the latest years for Nightwish, and no matter how much I write, and if people don't like it, it's Tuomas who's going to get the shit. It's not fair, I know. This time around, I'm here. I'm the target. Throw your darts. Yeah, of course I am. And there are some shows you do and all that, and even as a old road dog, you still get something like the first time ever in Wembley and shooting a DVD and everything. It's like, ooh, wow, I'm feeling something again. It comes when there's like important big things. But of course, if I'm doing like a show a night in row, then some off, and then again and again, then you tend to, the fear was left behind some decades.
Yeah, and I guess it also becomes kind of a routine that you start to just get used to things or something like that.
Yeah. But anyways, why I do this thing with its senseless logistics and senseless hours and traveling and waiting and being bored in backstages, hotels and buses and airplanes, it's the show. Shows are great. When you get a good show and people get into the vibe and you get yourself into the vibe, and then we're all in one goddamn happy rocking bubble. It's for all of us. It all depends on what year and what tender age you experience them. I mean, the first time ever to go to play in '86 to a big like festival in Rantarok and Twisted Sister on same stage, that was a big thing. But of course there are things that come later on, like that Wembley thing, that was absolutely great. Or with Nightwish, what was it, 2004 or 5, when did we sell, for instance, the first time we broke like a 10,000 cap with people, with just pulling it in with our own name. Those things you remember. Slayer Hall. Well, if you're looking at this, you might be interested in some musical things. keep on listening to it. Music saves. Church doesn't, no matter what it is. I shouldn't have said that. or you might listen to music, it saves your head. But there are also those 3,500 gods you might look into if you're not pleased with your life.